Making presentations is easy, but to wow your crowd and communicate your message well, that's a little bit more challenging.
So here are 5 tips to make a good presentation. Tip number 1, you want to start with a plan or an outline.
You may be tempted to jump right into building your presentation, but stop right there.
Planning out your presentation actually saves you time in the long run. 1, it ensures that you have all the necessary information for your presentation right from the start. And 2, it actually helps you visualize what type of slides you need to build. Do you need an all text-based slide? Can you incorporate charts or graphics? What are the best elements to include to get your message across to your audience and get them engaged with your presentation?
Now that you've gathered all this information, you need to identify what are your topic titles. Topic titles are essentially the key message on each slide, and it relates to the overall theme of your presentation. After that, create some blank slides with these titles. By doing this, you're setting up your presentation flow. You want to make sure this happens in a logical way that guides your audience to the conclusion you want them to arrive at.
Here's a great framework that you can use to figure out the flow of your presentation. We start off by detailing the current situation, then explain what the issue is, followed by what is the solution that we're proposing, and finally, we end with the ask.
Let's dive into an example. Let's say we want to launch a new bike line. Using our framework, we would have to start by explaining what is the current situation. Okay, let's have a look at our data. Let's say that there's a high demand for mountain bikes as people become more active in the summer. The issue that we're facing is that we're actually losing customers because we only have bikes that are geared towards kids and people who like riding in the city. So the proposed solution is that we launch this new bike line in order to capture the mountain biking enthusiast market. And we end with our ask, which is we're seeking funding to do research and development in order to launch this new line. Tip number 2, focus on only the key details. Now that you know what each slide needs to focus on, you want to go back to the information you've gathered and pull out the key details to support these slide titles. Don't be tempted to pull out paragraphs of information. You always want to edit this down to the most important point you're trying to make. Consider the following. Add numbers to back up your claims, especially when you're talking about KPIs, expenses, revenues, ROIs, etc. You also want to try and cite research to show the importance of your project in your presentation. And the last thing you need to think about is what is the key details that your team or management needs to know in order to make a decision after your presentation. Tip number 3, less is more. A wall of text is not a good look on a presentation. People often do this thinking that they need to provide all this detail so their audience understands the whole picture, but it's actually very visually overwhelming. You have to remember that presentations are both a visual and verbal way to communicate your message, so keep your details in a Word document or package that you can send to your audience after or before your presentation. 3 questions you can ask yourself when you're trying to figure out if you have too much on your slide. 1, would people spend more time reading your slides than actually listening to the presentation? 2, the information that's already there, can you break it down further into key points and phrases? And lastly, if you do notice there's too much on the slide, can you break it into multiple slides? Remember, it's about making your presentation into bite-sized pieces of information so that your audience can follow and absorb. Tip number 4, use icons and images in your presentations. Another way to convey more with less is to use icons and images. We're very visual creatures, so we tend to gravitate towards and remember pictures better. After all, they say pictures are worth 1,000 words. Icons act as a visual cue to help focus our audience on what the content of the slide will be about. Using our previous example about launching a new bike line, I want to illustrate what I mean by this. So it's been a year since the line has launched, and now we want to talk about the KPIs. In terms of growth, in the past 6 months, we have seen a 20% increase in revenue. We've also achieved a 5% market share where we previously had none. And one of the main roadblocks that we face is because we're entering the market late, we had a lot more competition than others. Images are also a great way to re-engage your audience and convey big picture concepts. When you're trying to choose the right image, think about the setting that you're presenting in. Are you speaking to a regular customer or a potential business partner, or are you trying to impress your boss? This tells you how formal or professional your images need to look. So if I'm trying to do a sales pitch about the bike, I would actually show pictures of people happily using our product. But let's say I'm talking to management about the construction of the bike. I would show our factory line, parts of the bike, etc.
But if I'm engaging our business partner, I might actually include photos about what our partnership could potentially bring and try and excite certain emotions in them when they're looking at these pictures. And my last tip is to use specific color palettes in your presentations.
Something that's not often discussed is how big a role color plays to make a cohesive on-brand presentation deck. It's common for people to mix and match the wrong colors together, causing the audience to kind of turn away or, even worse, have a hard time reading your slides.
So remember these tips when using color in your presentation. If you work for a company, use their color palette when building your slides. If you use dark background colors, always pair this with a bright or white text color and vice versa. This makes it easier for your text to be read. You want to check though whether the colors are piercing to the eye, and if so, you're going to have to change it. And last, use a maximum of 2 to 3 text colors, one for the slide title and or main text, and one for the section title on that slide. And this helps to highlight and emphasize key details without going over the rainbow when you're presenting your slides. If you don't have a company color palette, no worries. You can always search for one at Coolers, Color Hunt, or Adobe Color. This is a great place to start in order to build your color palette.
You want to pick colors that complement each other. Make sure you have a good mix of dark and light colors that work well together. Now you know how to build great presentations. You want to start with an outline and then pull out key details to support this outline. You also want to use the principles of less is more, which includes icons and images. And finally, to create a really cohesive look to your slides, you want to use a specific color scheme. If you want to shine as a presenter, check out my other video where I give you top 5 tips to be a great presenter. If you thought this video was valuable, let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe for more content.